Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're slipping quietly into the most forbidden corners of royal history. The love scandals that bent empires, toppled crowns, and whispered through palace corridors long after the candles died. These aren't the fairy tale romances your textbooks promised. These are the secret lovers hidden behind velvet curtains, the queens judged for desires they never confessed, the kings who chose passion over duty, and the forbidden nights that changed the direction of entire nations. From the moonlit chambers of medieval Europe to the perfumed courts of ancient Asia, to the trembling throne rooms where a single kiss could rewrite history, we're drifting into a world where power, desire, fear, and tenderness quietly dance together in the dark. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, let your breath soften, and follow me into the scandals that shook the throne, softly, slowly, like a secret finally ready to be told. Tonight, in this quiet room where the world finally exhales, we drift into the soft shadows of royal chambers, places where love was whispered like a forbidden spell, and where the price of a heartbeat could be a crown. They say kings rule nations, but even kings cannot rule the human heart. So as the candles hum gently against the stone walls of the past, we begin with a man who stood at the edge of history and chose love over the greatest empire on earth. In the stillness of 1936 London, the marble corridors of Buckingham Palace carried the footsteps of a king who was never meant to be ordinary. Edward VIII, charming, restless, adored by millions, yet profoundly lonely in a palace built to withstand everything except matters of the heart. He had been raised among protocols, ceremonies, and portraits of ancestors staring down from gilded frames. But none of those traditions prepared him for the quiet shock that unfolded the day he met a woman unlike any the British monarchy had ever allowed near its gilded doors. Wallis Simpson, American, divorced, unapologetically herself. She stepped into his life not like a scandal, but like a warm hand in a cold corridor, an uninvited reminder that kings were still human. Their connection wasn't a spark. It was a slow fire built from conversations that lasted long after the palace lamps dimmed, from laughter he hadn't heard since childhood, from the simple, disarming way she looked at him as a man, not a monarch. The kingdom frowned, the advisors panicked, the newspapers sharpened their ink. For the first time in centuries, the British throne trembled not from war nor revolt, but from love. Edward felt the weight of an empire on one shoulder and the warmth of Wallis's hand on the other. And somewhere in the midnight silence between duty and desire, between history and hope, he made a choice. December 10th, 1936, a date carved into the bones of the monarchy. Edward walked into the room that would rewrite the fate of England and spoke the words no king had ever dared to say. I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility without the help and support of the woman I love. The world froze. The crown slipped from his grasp, and love, just love, became the reason a king stepped down from a 1,000-year throne. Later, in the soft exile of foreign nights, he would lie awake hearing the faint echo of Buckingham's distant bells, bells meant for a king he no longer was. Yet he felt no regret, only the quiet certainty that for once in royal history, the heart had won. And now, as the candle of this story flickers lower, we drift toward another man who also walked the line between empire and love, one whose ambition shook continents, yet whose heart knelt for a single woman. As we drift deeper into the quiet tapestries of royal love, the soft tick-tock of an unseen clock guides us from the lonely corridors of Buckingham Palace to another place where history's heartbeat grew unsteady. Not in England this time, but across the Channel, in a world built on ambition, cannons, and the restless dreams of a young general who believed he could bend the map of Europe with his will alone. Long before he became emperor, before the laurel wreaths, before the marble statues carved his name into eternity, Napoleon Bonaparte was simply a young Corsican officer navigating the glittering, unpredictable night of Paris. And in that glitter, he saw her, Josephine, a widow with a past, a mother with responsibilities, a woman whose elegance seemed to soften the air around her. She wasn't the type of love story the future conqueror of Europe was expected to fall into, and yet, from the moment their eyes met, Napoleon felt the world tilt. With her, the noise of Paris dimmed, the war charts faded, the calculations that crowded his mind dissolved into something he had not felt in years: warmth. Their love unfolded not like a royal fairy tale, but like a fragile melody carried through the halls of a changing world. Josephine became the calm in the storm of Napoleon's rising power, the soft ink in his hundreds of letters, written from frozen battlefields, candle-lit tents, and distant fortresses. I wake filled with you, he wrote once, your image and the memory of last night's intoxicating pleasures. Those letters were not strategy, not politics. They were the raw breath of a man who, despite reshaping nations, remained helplessly human. But the empire that bloomed around Napoleon came with expectations, harsh, cold, unyielding. France demanded an heir. The dynasty needed a future. And love, no matter how deep, could not silence the whispers of advisors or the pressure of a continent watching. Josephine could not give him a child. And so, on a winter evening heavy with silence, they parted. Not as enemies, not even as strangers, but as two souls pulled apart by the machinery of history. Napoleon signed the divorce decree with a trembling hand.
Josephine accepted it with a heart heavier than her jeweled gowns. And yet, when the world finally closed in on him, when the battles were lost and exile replaced the thunder of armies, Napoleon still spoke her name. On his island of St. Helena, surrounded not by generals but by the wind brushing across desolate rocks, his voice cracked with memories he could never bury. Josephine, a name softer than the empire he built, a name stronger than the throne he lost. And now, as we drift away from Paris's dim salons and the lonely shores of exile, we turn toward another king, one whose tragedy was not the loss of a throne, but the loss of the one person who understood him in a world built on cold crowns and colder expectations.
And now, as the night grows softer and the stories fold into one another like pages turning in candlelight, we step into a darker corner of royal history, one where love did not topple a throne, yet still carved wounds deep enough to echo through the centuries. This is the quiet tragedy of Edward II and the man he loved beyond the understanding of his court, Piers Gaveston. Edward's childhood was a lonely one, shaped by the cold expectations of kingship long before he ever wore a crown. Raised among stone walls, stiff tutors, and the heavy silence of royal duty, he grew into a young man searching desperately for someone who saw him not as a future ruler, but as a person. That someone arrived in the form of Piers Gaveston, vibrant, charismatic, a knight whose very presence seemed to bring warmth into rooms that had known only formality. Their bond blossomed not in bold declarations, but in glances that lingered, in shared jokes that cut through the frost of court life, in the solace of knowing, just for a moment, they were simply two souls who fit. But the medieval world was not kind to stories like theirs. To the nobles, Piers was an intruder. To the court, he was a disruption. To the political order, he was a threat, because Edward loved him in a way that no advisor could control. Whispers rose like storm winds, accusations sharpened. The tension between king and kingdom stretched thin until the nobles resolved to do what Edward could never have imagined: remove Piers from the world entirely. One day, as Edward paced through the drafty corridors of his palace, a messenger delivered the truth. A truth so cold it seemed to freeze the air around him. Piers had been seized, tried in secret, and executed. No ceremony, no farewell, no mercy. In that moment, Edward did not lose his crown, but he lost something far more fragile, far more human. The one person who made the vast, echoing halls of kingship feel less empty. They say that after Piers's death, Edward wandered the palace at night, touching the stone walls as if searching for warmth that no longer lived there. He governed, yes. He ruled, yes. But the light behind his eyes, the spark that made him more than his title, dimmed into a lingering shadow. And in the quiet of those long nights, history suggests that he whispered Piers's name, not as a king mourning a favorite,
but as a man mourning the only soul who ever understood him without condition. So, as this chapter draws to a close, we are left with a truth that threads through every royal scandal, every forbidden affection, every lost crown, and every broken heart. Power can command armies, thrones can bend nations, but love rarely survives the weight of a kingdom. Yet it is always love, not the crown, that keeps the human story alive. And tonight, as the candle of this chapter burns low, we gently close the door on these three kings whose hearts refused to follow the rules written for them.
Tonight, as the palace curtains fall a little heavier, and the golden glow of candlelight softens the edges of history, we step into a quieter kind of power, one woven not from swords or crowns, but from whispered conversations shared in the stillness of royal chambers. This is the world of secret lovers who never sat on thrones themselves, yet shaped the fate of whole empires with nothing more than a voice soft enough to disarm kings. And we begin with the woman whose influence glided through France like perfume lingering in a corridor, Madame de Pompadour. Jeanne-Antoinette Poisson was never meant for royalty. She was born far from silk, far from marble halls, far from the echo of royal trumpets. And yet there was something about her, an intelligence wrapped in grace, a softness sharpened with wit, that drew Louis XV not just toward her beauty, but toward her mind. When she entered Versailles, she did not stride like a conqueror. She floated. In a palace full of glittering chandeliers and polished etiquette, she became the single point of warmth the king sought at the end of every exhausting day. Pompadour never tried to rule France. She simply understood the king in ways no one else bothered to. She knew the weight behind his sighs, the hidden anxieties in his silence, the loneliness masked by velvet and ritual. And so, in evenings where firelight flickered across the golden panels of his private study, she would sit beside him, not grandly, not ceremoniously, but with a quiet steadiness that made kings feel human again. From those conversations, decisions bloomed, not through manipulation, but through connection. Ministers rose and fell after a single whispered observation. Entire artistic movements flourished because she saw beauty where others saw expense. And the king, softened by her calm voice, found himself choosing paths shaped gently by her presence. People whispered that she controlled him, but the truth was quieter, more human. Louis XV listened to her because she was the only person who spoke to him without fear. In a world built on protocol, Pompadour spoke with sincerity. In a court obsessed with power, she moved with tenderness. And in the silent hours after midnight, when the palace guards switched shifts and the corridors cooled, her voice carried farther than any decree because it reached the one place no royal advisor could touch, the king's heart. Tonight,
As we drift deeper into this chapter, we follow the thread of this soft power, a thread that leads us from Versailles to the shadowy arches of another French court, where a young king found comfort in a love that defied age, expectation, and every rule written for him.
From Versailles, the night carries us gently along the quiet rivers of time to another French court, one painted not with gold, but with shadows of longing and devotion. Here in the soft hush of the 16th century, a young king found the anchor of his heart in a woman the world told him he should never love, Diane de Poitiers. To the chroniclers of her age, she was elegance shaped into human form. To the court, she was a mystery, serene, controlled, radiant in a way that made people lower their voices when she passed. And to King Henri II, she was the sun that steadied him in a world that constantly spun faster than he could breathe. Henri met Diane long before he became king. He was a quiet, sensitive boy growing up in a palace that demanded strength, decisiveness, and the cold sharpness of royal discipline. But Diane, she offered something different. Calm where he knew only pressure, understanding where others offered judgment. A hand on his shoulder that lingered just long enough to remind him he was human. Their love was unusual to many. Diane was 20 years older, a widow, a woman expected to fade politely into the margins of court life. Yet with Henri, she became something extraordinary. A partner in confidence, a silent architect of balance in a turbulent court, the person who soothed the anxieties that crowned men often carried alone. In the mornings, as dew settled on the gardens of Chenonceau, Diane's influence could be felt in the smallest of gestures, an encouraging look, a whispered thought, a gentle suggestion that softened the edges of the king's decisions. Henri listened not because she insisted, but because her voice reached the parts of him no advisor could touch. She knew the weight of his crown, the strain behind his formal smiles, the loneliness buried beneath layers of ceremony. And so the kingdom saw changes, quiet ones, graceful ones. Funds were directed toward architecture that cherished beauty. Policies were adjusted with tenderness instead of haste. Even the king's royal emblem, the crescent moon, echoed her presence, subtle, luminous, always guiding. People murmured, courtiers frowned. The queen, Catherine de' Medici, watched with wary eyes. But the truth lived somewhere softer than scandal. Diane reminded Henri of who he wanted to be, not who the throne demanded. Their connection shaped not battles or borders, but the emotional climate of a reign. And when Henri rode into jousts wearing Diane's colors, a gesture so tender it whispered through every watching heart, it became clear that love, once again, was rewriting the quiet corners of royal history. Tonight, as the candle burns lower, we drift from Chenonceau's moonlit arches toward another unexpected love story. One born not in marble halls, but in the lively theaters and crowded streets of London, where a king found solace not in nobility, but in laughter.
Now,
As the night settles deeper and the stories of secret influence weave themselves into a softer rhythm, we leave the moonlit arches of France and drift toward the lively, bustling streets of Restoration London. Here, the scent of roasted chestnuts mixes with the laughter floating from crowded taverns, and under the glow of lanterns swinging gently in the fog, a king found a different kind of love, one as warm and unexpected as a hand reaching for his in the dark. Her name was Nell Gwynn. And unlike the women of Versailles or the noble ladies of the French courts, she entered history not through lineage or privilege, but through wit, humor, and an unshakable spirit that drew people toward her like sparks flying toward fire. Before she caught the attention of Charles II, Nell was simply a woman of the stage, a comic actress with bright eyes, quick words, and a smile that made London forget its troubles for a moment. She grew up poor, selling oranges in theaters before stepping into the spotlight herself. But when Charles saw her perform, something softened in him. He had endured exile, war, suspicion, and the heavy expectations of reclaiming a fractured throne. Yet in Nell's laughter, he rediscovered something he had not felt since youth: ease. Nell didn't treat him like a king. She teased him, nudged him, joked with him, and made him breathe again. And in a world where courtiers bowed with rehearsed reverence, her candor cut through the stiffness like sunlight through morning fog. In private, their conversations were not about policy or power. They were full of little nothings, stories from the theater, impressions of nobles, playful complaints about the absurdities of palace life. And somehow, those little nothings began to shape the king's days more profoundly than the weightiest political counsel, because Nell reminded him of the ordinary humanity buried beneath royal ceremony. When Parliament argued, her humor softened his frustration. When the court whispered scandal, her presence steadied him. When the burdens of a nation pressed too tightly, she leaned her head on his shoulder as if to say, without words, that he did not have to carry all of it alone. The people adored her too. She was one of them, a woman who came from the streets and reached the palace not by scheming, but by sincerity. There's a story that once, when her carriage was mistaken for that of a hated noblewoman and the crowd grew hostile, she opened the window and called out, "Good people, be calm! I am the Protestant whore." The crowd laughed, cheered, and let her pass. And perhaps that moment captures her better than any royal portrait ever could. Bold, self-aware, endlessly warm. Charles II never relinquished his crown for her. He never changed the course of European power because of her. But in the quietest way, she changed him. She made the weight of kingship lighter. She made the man behind the crown visible again. And so, as this chapter draws to a close, we sit with the gentle understanding that power does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers through jokes shared in lamp-lit rooms, through a playful smile, through a woman who helped a king laugh his way back into his own humanity.
Tonight, as the world outside grows quiet and the shadows lean softly across the walls, we step into one of history's most whispered stories, a tale not of crowns or triumphs, but of a woman who once held the heart of a king, only to spend her last night listening to the echoes of judgment pressing against her chamber door. Anne Boleyn. For years, she has been painted as a temptress, a manipulator, a woman whose ambition burned too brightly. Yet, if we strip away the politics, the propaganda, the centuries of retellings, we find instead a young woman standing alone in the dim candlelight of the Tower of London, wondering how love could lead her here. On this final night, Anne was not the confident figure who once caught Henry VIII's eye in a crowded court. She was simply Anne, barefoot on cold stone floors, hearing the distant murmurs of guards who would not meet her gaze. The walls seemed to stare, history itself seemed to watch her, and she felt, perhaps more deeply than ever before, the terrifying weight of being a woman people had decided to misunderstand. She had risen from lady-in-waiting to queen, carried upward by hope and devotion. But with every step, eyes followed. Some admired, many despised. And when Henry's affection shifted, when whispers of her failures and accusations of forbidden relationships began to circle like vultures, the same eyes hardened. In this quiet night, Anne held on to the only thing she had left, her truth. She knew the accusations of adultery, treason, even incest, were shadows shaped by political fear and royal desperation. But innocence is fragile when a kingdom needs a villain. As the candle beside her flickered, Anne placed a hand on her heart, not in fear, but in a kind of weary acceptance. Outside, the sky was vast and indifferent. Inside, she sat with memories. Her daughter Elizabeth's tiny hands, her early days at court when she still believed love could protect her, the laughter she once shared with the king who now refused to hear her voice. And maybe the deepest tragedy of all was not her fate, but the way the world chose to remember her, a woman crushed beneath centuries of accusation. Tonight, we sit beside her in this last quiet hour, not to judge, not to repeat the gossip history clung to, but to imagine the human heartbeat behind the legend, the soft breath of a woman who, for a brief moment, believed she was loved enough to survive a kingdom's expectations. Now the night leads us to another queen, one whose story is often told in hurried sentences, as if history itself felt uncomfortable lingering on her fragility. Catherine Howard was barely more than a girl when she stepped into the cold machinery of Henry VIII's court, a place built for strategy, not softness, for protocol, not innocence. She was young, glowing with the natural brightness of someone untouched by the heavy games of power. And yet that brightness became the very thing people used against her. Catherine entered the palace like a spring breeze slipping into a winter room. But in the Tudor world, youth was not protection. Youth was suspicion. Every glance became a rumor. Every smile a piece of evidence. Every moment of human vulnerability a crime waiting to be written into law. On the night before her execution, Catherine did not rage. She did not collapse under the weight of fear. Instead, she moved with a haunted stillness, like someone watching her own life from a distance. As she sat alone, she felt the invisible eyes of the court on her, not the courtiers themselves, but the judgment they had left behind. That same judgment had chased her since the day she entered the palace, whispering that a girl like her did not belong among the hardened ambitions of the Tudor crown. They accused her of being frivolous, reckless, unfaithful. But beneath the accusations was a deeper truth. Catherine had been too young to understand the danger of being watched, too young to see how every conversation, every past memory, every innocent closeness could be twisted into something monstrous. And tonight, as the candlelight trembled across her room, Catherine felt what Anne had felt before her, a sense that she was being crushed not by guilt, but by misunderstanding. She was not a schemer, not a seductress, not a mastermind of deception. She was, at her core, a young woman who wanted what young people have wanted across centuries: affection, belonging, a sense that her heart mattered. But in the palace, hearts were liabilities, and girls who stumbled were not guided, they were consumed. As Catherine rested her head against the cold wall, perhaps she realized the cruel irony. History would remember her not for who she truly was, but for who others insisted she must have been. And in that quiet, her story becomes something tender, a reminder that sometimes the greatest tragedies are born not from evil, but from innocence placed in the wrong hands. And finally, the night carries us to the most misunderstood queen of all, a woman whose name became a symbol, whose reputation became a weapon, and whose every breath seemed to echo beneath the scrutiny of a nation hungry for someone to blame. Marie Antoinette. Her story has been wrapped in myths so tightly that the truth struggles to breathe. Let them eat cake, a sentence she never said, yet one history insisted on placing in her mouth. Extravagance, immorality, secret affairs, some real, most imagined. But behind the gossip stood a young woman swept into a kingdom that had already decided who she was long before she arrived.
In the quiet of her private chambers, far from the glare of Versailles' gilded mirrors, Marie lived with the unsettling sensation of being watched. Not by courtiers or servants, but by an entire nation whose eyes pressed against her like cold glass. To them, she was foreign, frivolous, wasteful. To herself, she was simply trying to breathe in a world that never let her exhale. The accusations didn't come all at once. They grew slowly, like cracks appearing in the walls. Every dress she wore became proof of decadence. Every friendship a conspiracy. Every moment spent seeking joy a crime against a starving people. Whether she loved or laughed or tried to soothe her anxious husband, the whispers followed her, reshaping her into a caricature she could not escape. And when the revolution arrived, those whispers turned into shouts. But on the night before her trial, when the palace noise had faded and only the echo of distant footsteps remained, Marie felt something unexpectedly human: exhaustion. Not fear, though fear lingered. Not anger, though she had every reason to feel it. But exhaustion from being misunderstood. From being turned into a symbol instead of allowed to remain a person. She thought of her children, of the gardens where she once walked barefoot, craving a simplicity she was never permitted, of the husband she had stood beside awkwardly, tenderly, in a marriage built more on duty than affection. And perhaps she wondered how a world could so easily twist loneliness into decadence, shyness into arrogance, silence into guilt. As she lay there in the dimness, history pressed its face against her window, waiting to judge her one last time. But Marie, stripped of jewels and ceremony, felt an odd calm, because beneath the accusations, the rumors, the slogans carved against her name, there still beat the heart of a woman who had tried, however imperfectly, to live gently in a world that demanded spectacle. Tonight we remember her not as a queen of excess, not as a villain of revolution, but as someone swallowed by the gaze of millions who never truly saw her.
The soft toll of wedding bells drifts through the darkness tonight. Gentle, golden, full of promises that once felt unbreakable. And as their chime fades into the quiet air, we follow it back through the centuries to a marriage born not from choice, but from diplomacy, a union meant to bind kingdoms rather than hearts. Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII. Their story is often told from its tragic end, but tonight we return to its quiet beginning. Catherine was young, dignified, and hopeful when she crossed the sea to England. She carried with her the weight of Spain, the expectations of alliances, and the tender belief that duty and affection could grow together. Henry, before becoming the storm history remembers, was once gentle, musical, idealistic, eager to prove himself worthy of both crown and love. And in those early years, they truly did love. Their laughter filled the newly built chambers of the Tudor court. They walked the gardens not as monarchs trapped by obligation, but as two people who believed their marriage might anchor a peaceful future. But as time whispered forward, expectations hardened. Every cradle that stayed empty became a political wound. Every daughter born, beloved, yet not the son the kingdom demanded, deepened the crack spreading through their bond. Catherine prayed, Henry brooded, and the court watched, the way people always do when they sense a story quietly breaking. In the stillness of their palace nights, Catherine must have felt the shift first, the subtle cooling in Henry's voice, the growing impatience, the sense that the blame for a missing heir was slowly settling on her shoulders like frost. And Henry, trapped between desire for legacy and lingering affection, began to see the woman he once adored not as a partner, but as an obstacle. Love, once soft and sincere, became strained beneath the weight of crowns. And yet, Catherine never stopped loving him, even as the world turned sharp, even as Henry drifted toward another woman, even as the kingdom prepared for rupture. Catherine held her composure like a flame cupped in trembling hands. Her tragedy was not betrayal. It was devotion that outlived the space where love could survive. Tonight, the wedding bells that opened this chapter dissolve into a different sound, the faint breath of cold wind running through an empty corridor, where footsteps once moved in harmony, a reminder that arranged marriages do not always shatter because two people never cared. Sometimes they break because they once cared too deeply for a dream the world refused to let them keep.
The wedding bells fade, and now the night carries us further east, into the vast snow-dusted world of Imperial Russia, where another arranged marriage unfolded not with tenderness, but with a quiet ache that grew heavier each passing year. Peter the Great and Eudoxia Lapukina. Their marriage was forged not by affection, but by tradition, a match chosen for Peter before he even understood what it meant to choose. Eudoxia, dutiful and devout, entered the marriage with hopes shaped by generations of Russian women who believed obedience and patience could one day become love. Peter, however, was already stretching beyond the world he was born into. He dreamed of ships, distant lands, Western ideas, and a future far larger than the walls of Moscow's old court. Eudoxia was a reminder of everything he wished to escape. And yet, in the beginning, they tried. Two strangers sharing meals, prayers, silences. But some silences grow too large. Some distances refuse to disappear. In the cold chambers of their palace, Peter felt trapped, not by Eudoxia herself, but by the life she represented. And Eudoxia, sensing his restlessness, grew smaller in her own skin, like someone trying to take up less space in a world that no longer wanted her presence. Their marriage became a long corridor of misunderstandings. Eudoxia offered loyalty. Peter wanted transformation. She held to tradition. He ran toward modernity. She loved quietly. He loved the world loudly. And yet the tragedy of their story is not cruelty, it is incompatibility. Two people bound by a ceremony neither had the freedom to question. As years passed, Peter distanced himself more and more until Eudoxia felt like a shadow standing beside a man chasing the horizon. She wept in private. He avoided the rooms where she waited, and the court, cold and watchful, pretended not to see. Eventually, Peter sought escape, not through words, but through action. He removed Eudoxia from the palace, sending her to a convent under the guise of duty and piety. But what he truly sought was freedom from a life he believed had been assigned to him, not chosen. In the quiet of that convent, Eudoxia must have felt the finality of it all. Not just the end of a marriage, but the shrinking of her world to a few stone walls and prayer books. She was not wicked. He was not heartless. They were simply two lives braided together by force, unraveling as soon as they were allowed to breathe. And as tonight's story closes, the wedding bells that once rang for them are long gone, replaced by the cold wind sighing through empty Russian halls, carrying with it the lonely truth that not every union meant to strengthen a kingdom can survive the vast distance between two souls.
And now, the soft echo of those distant wedding bells leads us into the most delicate of these arranged unions, a marriage born from diplomacy, lived in isolation, and remembered through shadows cast by a palace that never truly became a home. Maria Antonia of Austria, better known to history as Marie Antoinette, and Louis XVI. She was 14, a girl dressed as a bride, sent across borders not to find love, but to seal peace between empires. The journey from Vienna to Versailles was more than miles. It was a shedding of childhood, of language, of familiarity. As her carriage rolled through the French countryside, she must have wondered how much of herself she was expected to abandon to become the queen they wanted. Louis XVI, shy and awkward, waited for her not as a husband prepared for marriage, but as a boy equally overwhelmed by the weight placed on his shoulders. Their wedding, wrapped in gold and ceremony, hid two hearts beating with uncertainty. And their first nights in Versailles revealed the truth. This was a marriage between two gentle souls, but neither knew how to reach the other. Maria Antonia found herself lost in the dazzling cruelty of the French court. Eyes following her every step, whispers tracing her every gesture. She laughed too freely, they said. She spent too much, they insisted. She cared too little, they accused. But beneath the silk gowns and rehearsed smiles was a teenager desperate for comfort in a palace that felt like a gilded cage. Louis, for his part, was kind but withdrawn, unsure how to be the husband she needed
or the king France expected. Their rooms were close, yet their worlds felt oceans apart. And so night after night, Maria Antonia lay awake, listening to the unfamiliar rustling of Versailles, the footsteps outside her door, the muffled gossip, the sigh of distant chandeliers swaying in the draught. Everything around her felt like eyes staring. Everything within her felt small. She missed her mother. She missed the warmth of Vienna's music. She missed being seen as a person, not a symbol. Only later would France turn its frustration into fury and her name into accusation. But even before the revolution, her loneliness was already its own quiet tragedy. And tonight, we sit not with the legend, but with the girl, the young bride who tried to navigate a palace that seemed to hold its breath each time she moved. A marriage bound by diplomacy, shaken by misunderstanding, and softened only by moments when she and Louis shared shy, fragile attempts to connect. Two gentle hearts trying to grow roots in foreign soil. As this chapter closes, the wedding bells that once rang for them have long faded into silence, and in their place, only the sound the night knows well. The cold wind drifting through empty marble corridors, whispering of lives joined by duty, but divided by solitude.
Tonight, as you lie back and let the world grow distant, we drift far from marble palaces and cold European corridors, and sail instead along the dark, shimmering waters of the Nile. This is where forbidden love moves like moonlight on the river, silent, silver, and dangerous. The story of Cleopatra and Julius Caesar has been told as legend, as scandal, as politics disguised as passion. But for this quiet moment, in this history for sleep, we slow everything down and listen to the softest details. Alexandria breathes under a violet sky. The sea wind brushes the harbor. Inside the royal palace, the air is thick with incense and tension. Cleopatra, young, brilliant, cornered by enemies, needs more than soldiers. She needs an ally powerful enough to bend the world. Julius Caesar has arrived, iron and strategy wrapped into human form. But how do you reach a man surrounded by guards, suspicion, and Roman pride? Tradition says she refused to knock on his door like a supplicant. Instead, she chose something almost dreamlike. She had herself wrapped in a carpet, rolled up like a secret, and smuggled into his presence. We will never know exactly how it happened, but imagine this with me. A Roman general in a foreign palace, candlelight flickering on his armor, listening to the rustle of fabric as servants unroll a bundle at his feet. The carpet unfurls, and from its folds rises Cleopatra, eyes bright, hair unruly from the journey, heart beating fast in a room that smells of oil and dust and possibility. It began as politics, a queen fighting for her throne, a Roman seeking advantage. But under the soft Egyptian night, strategy slowly blurred into something warmer. They talked not just of war and territory, but of poetry, of power, of what it meant to carry the fate of millions alone. On the balcony overlooking the Nile, the water glowed under the moon like polished stone. Somewhere in the distance, boats drifted, lanterns swaying gently. In that soft darkness, Caesar saw not just Egypt's ruler, but a woman who refused to be small. Someone who could match his mind, challenge his certainty, and sit beside him in the storm. To Rome, their connection was scandalous, a dangerous merging of East and West, queen and conqueror. But to the two of them, in those quiet hours when the torches burned low and the city hummed with distant music, it may have felt like something simpler. Two exhausted souls finding a brief, impossible harbor in each other. Tonight, as the Nile flows on without them, we stand at the edge of that balcony, listening to the river carry their secrets away into the dark. As the Nile glides on beneath the stars, our story does not end with Caesar's footsteps fading from Alexandria. In the soft hush of history, another figure approaches Cleopatra's life. This time, not as a calculating general from a distant republic, but as a man already half undone by the weight of Rome itself, Mark Antony. If Caesar was the sharp edge of order, Antony was the restless heart of contradiction. A soldier and a dreamer, fierce in battle, yet easily seduced by laughter, music, and the warmth of human company. When he met Cleopatra, the world had already begun to fray around them. Power in Rome was shifting, alliances cracking, suspicion rising. And into that unstable space stepped a love that felt less like strategy and more like surrender. Imagine a night on the Nile. Barges drifting under lantern light, musicians plucking strings as the river mirrors the sky. Cleopatra reclines on a deck draped in silk, the scent of lotus and wine in the air. Antony, broad-shouldered, sun-darkened, listens to her speak, not as a queen negotiating, but as a woman painting whole worlds with her voice. Together they created a space where the outside world dissolved. Rome's accusations, the Senate's disapproval, the rumors that painted Cleopatra as a siren and Antony as a fool, all of it seemed to fall away each time they returned to the river, to moonlight, to the soft rustle of linen and the sound of shared laughter echoing over water. But empires do not sleep. Rome watched, Rome judged. To many, their love was not romantic, it was treason. Antony was expected to belong to Rome, but his heart had drifted down the Nile. The more they clung to each other, the more the political noose tightened. Battles were lost, allies abandoned them, and still, in the midst of failure, their connection deepened into something raw and fragile. When defeat finally closed in and their enemies surrounded Alexandria, they faced a choice: to be paraded as trophies through Roman streets, or to write their own ending, together. Cleopatra, in her final moments, chose a death woven into legend. Poison, perhaps, a serpent's bite, perhaps something simpler. Antony, mortally wounded, is said to have died in her arms, pulled up to the tower where she waited, his blood staining the floor as outside, history rearranged itself without them.
Tonight, we do not focus on the drama, but on the quiet truth beneath it. Two people who loved each other in a way the world refused to allow. Their love was not perfect. It was messy, reckless, and at times devastating. But under the soft, eternal gaze of the Nile, it was theirs. And as the river flows on, it carries their story like a whispered promise that even when empires demand obedience, the human heart will, sometimes, choose ruin instead of surrender.
We leave the Nile now, its waters still glowing softly in the back of your mind, and travel east, far across deserts, mountains, and time, until the air changes and the night takes on the quiet, fragrant weight of incense and plum blossoms. This is Chang'an, capital of the Tang dynasty. And here, under a pale, watchful moon, another forbidden love slowly rewrote the fate of an empire. Emperor Xuanzong of Tang, whom we often call Dongming Huang, was once a ruler of brilliance, his court filled with music, poetry, and the confident pulse of a golden age. But even golden ages grow heavy. Power is lonely. And into that loneliness stepped Yang Yuhuan, Zhong Guifi. To the world, she was beauty in human form. To him, she was something even rarer, a presence that made the palace feel less like a gilded cage and more like a place where his heart could rest. Imagine a summer evening in Chang'an, lanterns swaying gently along palace walkways, the sound of a pipa drifting through the air like falling petals. The emperor sits beneath a carved wooden pavilion, robe loosened, crown set aside. Zhong Guifi dances softly or simply sits nearby, her laughter low, her eyes reflecting the lantern light. In those moments, the burdens of the throne recede. They share lychee fruit, brought from faraway lands, just to make her smile. Poets later would describe their love as excessive, indulgent, even dangerous. But in the soft space between one note of the pipa and the next, it was just a man and a woman trying to be less alone. Yet the court watched. Generals grumbled. Ministers whispered that while the emperor played music and wrote poetry for his beloved, the frontiers grew fragile. Resentment gathered quietly, like storm clouds behind a painted screen. When rebellion finally erupted, most famously under An Lushan, the empire shook, and many chose to blame her. On that terrible journey of escape, with soldiers restless and the dynasty itself trembling, Xuanzong was forced into the cruelest bargain a lover could face. To save himself and what remained of his power, he had to let her die. History tells us she was strangled along the road, away from music, away from moonlight, leaving the emperor to ride on without her, carrying a grief no crown could soften. Later, poets would write of him remembering her, of nights when music returned to the palace but felt hollow, of moonlit courtyards where every shadow seemed shaped like her absence. And tonight, under our own invisible sky, we remember not just the scandal, not just the downfall, but the quiet core of their story. A ruler and a woman who found in each other a brief island of tenderness in a world made of duty and steel. As this chapter closes, the shimmer of the Nile and the glow of Chang'an's moon fade into one soft darkness. All that remains is the faint echo of a pipa string and the sound of cold night wind moving through empty palace corridors, where once, long ago, forbidden love had dared to breathe. Tonight, as the world grows still around you, we return to the east once more, into the candle-lit corridors of the Tang dynasty, where silken curtains swayed like breath, and where ambition learned to move with the softness of perfume. This is the story of Wu Zetian, not just the only woman to sit on the dragon throne, but a figure whose life intertwined love, survival, and power until no one could tell where one ended and the other began. Imagine her first nights in the palace, a young girl entering as a low-ranked concubine, surrounded by women who had spent their entire lives learning how to be seen, how to be chosen. The palace was a battlefield made of smiles. She learned quickly. Yet beneath her composure, there was a quiet intellect, observing, listening, storing every shift of tone, every whisper that leaked through the bamboo screens. Her earliest relationship with Emperor Taizong was not one of romance, but of calculation and possibility. The subtle power of attention, of sharp words spoken softly. But when Taizong died and she was sent to a convent, her story could have ended there. Yet history bends for certain spirits. She returned not as a forgotten concubine, but through the heart of the next emperor, Gaozong. Their bond was complicated, part tenderness, part strategy, part the solace of two people who understood the weight of ruling long before they ever ruled. Some called her manipulative, others called her brilliant. But in the gentle quiet of night, perhaps it was simpler. Two minds finding company in a palace where sincerity was rare. As Gaozong's health declined, she stepped into the vacuum he left, not by storm, but by presence. Decisions whispered in private chambers swayed the empire. Ministers who underestimated her found themselves dismissed, exiled, or quietly erased from the center of power. And yet, woven through her rise, there were lovers whose roles blurred between affection and utility. Young men of literature and beauty, summoned not only for pleasure, but for the comfort of being seen without suspicion, something she could no longer find among politicians and generals. To the world, these relationships were scandalous. To her, they were survival, breathing spaces in a life where every alliance had to be sharpened like a blade. But tonight, we do not stand with the rulers who feared her. We sit with the woman who lay awake in the royal bedchamber, listening to the wind brushing against palace tiles, knowing that every choice she made shaped not just her life, but the entire history of China. Power in her hands did not roar, it whispered, sometimes lovingly, sometimes dangerously, always deliberately. And as we leave her chamber, we feel the subtle shift of an empire turning under her quiet, unwavering gaze.
Now the palace lamps dim, and we drift north into a colder world. Russia again, but not the Russia of Eudoxia's sorrow. This time it is the Russia of Catherine the Great, where ice-blue mornings glittered like glass, and the air carried the sharp scent of pine and empire. Catherine's life was shaped by a loveless marriage, political danger, and the constant performance of strength. But in the vast emptiness of royal power, she found something unexpected, a soulmate, Grigory Potemkin. Their connection did not burst into being. It grew, like embers sheltered from the wind. Potemkin was unpredictable, brilliant, theatrical, maddening, and utterly magnetic. He could argue with her in the throne room, make her laugh minutes later, and then sketch out military reforms before dinner. And Catherine, with her sharp intellect and deeper loneliness, recognized in him a rare equal. They were lovers, but they were also something more difficult to name, co-architects of a vision, two wandering minds that collided and found, almost accidentally, a shared rhythm. Their relationship ebbed and flowed, sometimes fiery, sometimes quiet. Eventually, they no longer needed to be together romantically to remain bound. Some historians believe they married in secret. Others think they moved into a deeper, stranger intimacy, lovers who had outgrown the need for possession. What remains undeniable is the tenderness that survived every shift in their roles. They wrote letters, hundreds of them, letters filled not with court formulas, but with confessions, frustrations, jokes, longing. Catherine signed one of them simply, "Your devoted little mother," and in another, he teased her as "my beloved cat." These were not the words of cold monarchs. These were fragments of two souls who understood each other, even when the world insisted they should not. Together, they expanded Russia's territories, rebuilt its military, dreamed up cities, and imagined a civilization that reached toward the Black Sea. When Potemkin traveled, she placed trusted officials beside him. When she ruled from the capital, he advised from afar, his letters fluttering across the empire like migrating birds. Yet even their greatest achievements could not anchor them permanently. Potemkin was restless, burning with ambitions too large for one life. Catherine was tied to a throne that demanded she appear immovable. Still, in her later years, when he suddenly died on a roadside from fever, Catherine locked herself away and wept, not as an empress, but as a woman who had lost the one person who understood the private language of her heart. Tonight, we sit quietly in that grief, not dramatic, not political, simply human.
a reminder that even the greatest empires were shaped not by armies, but by the fragile threads woven between two people who once whispered love into the cold Russian night.
And now, we return softly to the story that opened this entire journey. The moment where love did not simply shake a throne, but redirected the course of the 20th century. Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson. In Chapter 1, we touched their story as a human tragedy of love versus duty. But tonight, in this final chapter, we look at it the way history remembers it, as a turning point so delicate that even one change could have reshaped the world. Imagine Edward before the crisis, not as the romantic exile we picture now, but as a king standing at the edge of Europe in the 1930s when shadows were lengthening and the drums of war were beginning to tremble beneath the surface. Edward admired German efficiency. He distrusted the political class. He longed for a simpler, more direct form of leadership, one that frightened many in Parliament. And into this volatile moment stepped Wallis Simpson, twice divorced, sharp-tongued, steady-eyed. To Edward, she was not a scandal. She was clarity. She made him feel understood in a way the royal machinery never had. Their bond grew not in ballrooms, but in private rooms filled with soft lamplight, where he could finally breathe without performing the role generations had written for him. But as their love deepened, the tension tightened like a drawn bow. And then came the choice, the crown or her. Most kings would have chosen the crown. Edward did not. In December 1936, he stepped before the microphone and said the words that severed him from 1,000 years of royal expectation. I have found it impossible to discharge my duties as king without the help and support of the woman I love. History often quotes those lines, but few imagine the silence after he said them. The silence where the British Empire, for a heartbeat, felt suspended in unfamiliar air. For if Edward had stayed, would the monarchy have survived the war? Would Britain's stance toward Germany have softened? Would Churchill have risen to power the same way? Would the entire shape of World War II have shifted? No one can answer, but the world that came was shaped in part because Edward walked away. That too is a love scandal, one that redirected geopolitics, weakened fascist sympathies at the top of Britain's leadership, and placed George VI on the throne, setting the stage for Queen Elizabeth II's long reign. Tonight, we turn down the volume of history and return to the man himself, a former king lying awake in a quiet villa in France, decades later. Wallis sleeps beside him. Rain taps softly on the window. He stares at the ceiling and wonders, not with regret, but with a kind of reflective calm, whether the world ever truly understood what he gave up and what he gained. Love did not make him a good king, but it made him finally a whole human being. And as we close this chapter, the echoes of all these forbidden loves, whispered alliances, and dangerous affections swirl together into one gentle truth. History may be written in marble, but it is shaped quietly, endlessly, by the fragile choices of the human heart. And now, as the last candle in the palace burns low, and the corridors of time grow quiet again, we gently close the doors on tonight's journey. From the moonlit balconies of Alexandria, to the snow-dusted courts of Russia, to the echoing halls of London and Chang'an, we've drifted through a world where royal love was never simple, never safe, and never just private. These were not just scandals for gossip. They were turning points. A queen waiting for execution in a cold tower. An emperor forced to trade the woman he loved for the illusion of stability. A king who walked away from his crown and quietly changed the path of World War II. Behind every headline history remembers, there was always a quiet heartbeat, a pair of hands reaching for someone they were not supposed to touch, a choice that seemed small in the moment, but bent the shape of the future. If your eyes are heavy now, let them close. Let the courts fade, let the crowns, the whispers, the betrayals and forbidden kisses drift far away, like lanterns floating down a dark river. This is why we tell history for sleep, not to glorify the chaos, but to soften it, to hold it in the palm of a calm voice so your mind can finally let go. Somewhere, in another century, Cleopatra is still stepping out of that carpet. Wu Zetian is still listening to the wind over the palace rooftops. Edward VIII is still looking at the world he left behind and the woman he chose instead. Their choices are already made. Yours tonight is simple. Rest. If you're still awake and this bedtime history story kept you company, you can gently tap like, subscribe, or leave a quiet comment about which royal love stayed with you the most. That helps this little corner of the internet reach more tired minds who need a soft place to land. But for now, you don't have to remember names, dates, dynasties, or wars. Just breathe. Let the music, the relaxing history for sleep, and the steady rhythm of your own heartbeat carry you a little further away from today. Thank you for wandering through time with me. I'll be here the next night you need a story to fall asleep to. Good night, and let history keep watch while you finally rest.